Imagine a young African soldier who rises from the dusty classrooms of Burkina Faso to the global spotlight as one of the continent's boldest leaders. This is not fiction. This is the true story of Captain Ibrahim Traore. In just a short period, he has become a symbol of hope for millions, a nightmare for Western interests, and the face of a new African uprising. Some call him the new Sankara. Others call him a threat to global stability. But no one can ignore him. This documentary dives into the full story of Ibrahim Traore, his background, the rise to power, the ideology he represents, and why the world is watching him with equal parts admiration and fear. Welcome to Naija Africa, the home for real African stories that matter. Like, share and subscribe as we unpack this revolutionary journey. Ibrahim Traore was born in 1988 in Bondoukoua town in western Burkina Faso. Unlike many African leaders raised in political families, Traore came from humble beginnings. He excelled in school, especially in science, eventually studying geology and chemistry at the University of Ouagadougou. But his destiny was not in labs or classrooms. Driven by a deep sense of duty, Traore joined the Burkinabe army in 2009. He was soon stationed in the north, battling jihadist groups and gaining first-hand experience of the crisis that plagued the country. He saw villages abandoned, families destroyed, and fellow soldiers demoralized. But what struck him most was how powerless his country seemed in the face of this violence, especially with heavy foreign military presence that produced few results. In January 2022, a military coup led by Paul-Henri Damiba removed President Roch Kabore from power. Many, including Traore, hoped that this change would bring real progress in fighting insecurity and restoring national dignity. But within months it became clear that nothing had changed. Damiba appeared more interested in political power than military strategy. He refused to break from France and kept close ties with the West. Disillusioned once again, Traore, along with a group of young officers, decided that if real change was to happen, it would have to come from bold, uncompromising leadership. On September 30, 2022, they took action. Damiba was ousted and Ibrahim Traore was declared head of state at just 34 years old. A new era had begun. Burkina Faso had long been entangled in France's neocolonial web. Through the CFA franc currency, military operations, and control over natural resources, France maintained deep influence across West Africa. But Traore was different. He was not interested in compromise. In one of his first moves, he ordered the withdrawal of French troops from Burkinabe soil. Military bases were dismantled, French media banned, and the French ambassador expelled. This was not just a policy change. It was a declaration of war against neocolonialism. The streets of Ouagadougou erupted in celebration. Young people waved Burkinabe and Russian flags, singing songs of freedom and sovereignty. Traore had tapped into a hunger that had long gone ignored, the hunger for African dignity. Burkina Faso joined forces with Mali and Niger, two neighboring countries also led by military rulers with anti-French sentiments. Together they formed the Alliance of Sahel States, a regional bloc aimed at mutual defense and the rejection of Western interference. They began talking about replacing the CFA franc, establishing a shared currency, and forming a united front against terrorism. This alliance challenged both ECOWAS and Western powers. For the first time since independence, African countries were choosing each other over foreign powers. What does Ibrahim Traore believe in? His speeches reveal a deep commitment to self-reliance, patriotism and Pan-Africanism. He urges young Africans to study, build, defend and believe in their nations. He speaks of the need for African solutions to African problems, and he calls out hypocrisy from international institutions. In one viral clip he asks why Africa, a continent rich in gold, uranium, cobalt and oil, still begs for aid. The crowd erupts in applause. It is not just rhetoric. It is revolution in words. But with great power comes great scrutiny. Critics argue that Traore rules by decree, suppresses opposition and delays elections. There are concerns about press freedom and the use of Russian mercenaries. Yet his supporters counter that Burkina Faso is at war and that drastic times call for drastic leadership. They point to the growing stability in some regions and his refusal to live luxuriously or act like a typical African big man. Every African revolutionary is eventually compared to Thomas Sankara, and Traore is no exception. Sankara came to power in 1983 preaching anti-imperialism, feminism, environmentalism and simplicity. He renamed the country from Upper Volta to Burkina Faso, meaning land of upright people. But he was assassinated in 1987, allegedly with the backing of foreign interests and local betrayal. Traore has embraced Sankara's legacy not just in words but in style. He wears military fatigues, uses nationalist language and rides in modest vehicles. But will he escape the fate that took Sankara down? The West, especially France, has watched Traore with deep concern. His alignment with Russia, his rejection of IMF policies and his refusal to bow to international pressure all represent a dangerous precedent. If Traore succeeds, it could inspire other nations to follow suit. A domino effect across Francophone Africa could undermine decades of soft power investment. That is why media narratives quickly painted him as a threat, as unpredictable, as dangerous. But to many Africans he is a hero, finally standing up. Burkina Faso still faces serious challenges. Terrorist groups remain active, the economy is fragile, and isolation from the West brings risks. But Traore has already shifted the conversation. He has reminded Africans that sovereignty is not a gift, it is a fight. He has shown that youth leadership is possible and that courage still exists in African politics. Whether he lasts or not, Traore has changed the game. Ibrahim Traore is not just the president of Burkina Faso. He is the face of a new African rebellion. A rebellion against dependency, poverty, weak leadership and fear. His journey is still unfolding. But his message is already clear: Africa will no longer be silent. Do you believe in his mission, or do you fear where it may lead? Let us know in the comments. And remember to subscribe to Naija Africa, where we tell the stories others will not. This is not just news. This is the voice of a continent rising.